contesting the seat of Buckingham for the party. Mr Farage, you've tried to present some other policies this morning, aside from your main one about leaving the EU, but that's essentially the main message that you want voters to take, isn't it?
Well, look, 75% of our laws are now made in Brussels. The whole of our regulation on business and industry comes from Brussels. Unless we deal with that, it is very difficult to talk about how we can encourage growth in the British economy and how we can push on from here. But yes, look, in that manifesto, we talk about education, our belief in selective education, that it works, our belief that we shouldn't be encouraging up to 50% of our 18-year-olds to go on to university, that some should be learning trades. But we talk about the economy. We want to produce growth by getting rid of EU directives, but by the same token, we've got to deal honestly with the budget deficit that we're facing, and for the general election campaign thus far to have been dominated by an argument about £6 billion or not on national insurance really is ridiculous.
You have produced a long list here of things that you want to do, like restoring free dental checks, restoring free eye checks, increasing defence spending.
Yeah.
You want to have new bodies in charge of health boards, you want to get rid of employers' national insurance. There are an awful lot of expensive promises there. How on earth do you start to pay for all of these things?
Because we want to cut government spending next year, not by a paltry £6 or £10 billion, but by £50 billion.
And how on earth do you do that?
Well, the first thing you do is you stop paying Brussels £45 million a day. There's 16 billion of it before you even start. And we've produced a list of various quangos that, far from being good for this country, are dragging the economy of this country down, and we get rid of many of those. We accept there is going to be some pain in the public sector, but look, we've increased public sector jobs by 850,000 since 1997. I'm afraid we need some big cutbacks.
You've said, though, you want to double defence spending, you want to raise the income tax threshold for everybody, you want to get rid of employers' national insurance. Now, from my initial not perhaps very good sums, that adds up to an awful lot more than saving 16 billion from coming out of the EU.
No, well, I've said to you, we want to save 50 billion in year one, and some of that money is being reinvested, you're right, in getting people out of tax, in giving small employers the opportunity, the ability to take on more staff. And of course, as we learned back in the 1980s, in America and in Britain, when you cut taxes, far from revenue falling, it actually increases, because these are measures that would bring growth into the British economy, and tax takes would rise within 18 months.
Now, another thing you're doing in this election is you're going to not stand candidates against Conservative or Labour candidates if you think they're Eurosceptic enough. What are people meant to think about that? Because you're going to be supporting at the same time the Conservatives in some seats and supporting the Labour Party in other seats. If you're a confused voter, what are
there
you
are
meant to
some
take
issues. There are some issues occasionally in politics that matter an awful lot more than what colour rosette people wear on election day. And the question of our democracy, the question of who governs Britain, matters far more to us than any tribal tie. And it's very important that we have those voices in the House of Commons, both from the Labour Party and the Conservative Party, and I hope from UKIP too, because at some point in time there's going to be a national referendum on this. It'll come within the next few years, and we then need to form a broad coalition across the political spectrum.
Don't you think that people might find it bizarre that you will be campaigning for not one, not two, but three different political parties at this election?
Well, this is only happening in a few seats, and I think what people will say is that UKIP are prepared to put country before party when it matters, and indeed we are.
One final point. One of your policies is that you want to try to ban the burqa in public and in some private buildings. Now, the party leader seemed a bit confused about this policy, but how on earth are you going to implement that?
Well, I've said from day one, I think the implementation of this is very difficult indeed. I won't say impossible, but very difficult. As you probably know, the French and the Belgians are grappling with this problem at the moment. Quite how it's going to work out, I don't know. But the point of talking about it is to try and have a bigger debate about Sharia law. I mean, goodness me, the Archbishop of Canterbury has said he thinks Sharia law is desirable in British cities, and we don't think that.
So hang on, you're saying you don't know how to implement it, but it'll still be in the manifesto?
It's in the manifesto as an aspiration, but look, manifestos are aspirations. I accept there are huge practical difficulties with doing this, and we're not, for goodness sake, telling people what they wear walking down the high street. What we are saying is, I can't go into a bank wearing a motorcycle helmet, and nor should somebody go into a bank with their face covered. But in practical terms, it's very difficult to implement.
Okay, Nigel Farage, thank you very much indeed for joining us. I know we'll see plenty more of you on the campaign trail as things proceed in the next few weeks.
Laura there with UKIP. Nigel Farage. The Tories are unveiling their manifesto very shortly. I just want to show you what's been happening at Battersea Power Station, because they've been unveiling a